We're going to PC Jack. Microsoft have now begun to finally roll out Windows 11 officially. And while its critical response has been somewhat divisive, a lot of people have still upgraded and are getting on pretty well with it. I've been using it for a few days now, and while my response is fairly positive, today I thought I'd go through some of my first impressions of Windows 11, and some of the things I like about it, and some of the things I don't like about it. If you are looking to upgrade though, then make sure you're subscribed so you don't miss out on my Windows 11 installation tutorial that goes live later this week. So, starting things off, let's take a look at what Windows 11 has got right so far. And here it is. I've got Windows 11 installed on my main system. I spent a little bit of time getting my applications all organised and my files and whatnot, and overall I'm quite pleased with the actual UI for the system. Compared to Windows 10, it is definitely much more sleek and seems to be a bit more of a Mac OS kind of design. The opening and minimizing animations are quite neat as well. I do like that little fade it does, and it is really clean. We've also got the newly designed start menu, which is pretty handy because you can pin all your most used apps like you would on Windows 10. And I've also pinned my documents as well, so I can access them directly over here next to the power options. Talking of folders, storage itself seemed to remain fairly unchanged, and in addition to storage being fine locally, I've had no issues at all with mapping my network drives for my NAS. To be fair, most of the UI is fairly identical to Windows 10, but just with a few small tweaks. This should make it easier for more entry-level users who are not so familiar with this kind of OS. Now, onto the second part of the video. While there's a lot of things I like about Windows 11, there are also a lot of things I really don't like. Getting into it right away, Windows search is still useless. Shouldn't really be surprising at this point, but say if I wanted to launch my favourite game, Fallout 4. We'll search. And it brings up a web result, which is clearly not what I wanted. The game is installed on my system, so I just want to run it, not look up the Metacritic data for it. But don't worry, Edge comes up just fine, just in case you were worried. At least for this is something that you can amend with using PowerToys, but considering the community feedback that Microsoft definitely would have got back on how terrible Windows search is on Windows 10, you would have thought that they would have actually solved this problem when it came to Windows 11. But clearly, they've chosen to ignore it. Now, another thing I'm really irritated by is the way that Microsoft has created secondary options for really basic functions. For example, when you want to pin an app to your taskbar, obviously you would usually just right-click on the desktop icon for it and select Pin to Taskbar. But if we go to Steam on here, right-click, we don't actually get that option anymore. We only get the option to Pin to Start, which I thought was a bit strange, but then if you select Show More Options, we get the same options that you would usually get in Windows 10, including Pin to Taskbar. This is really strange, but maybe Microsoft were trying to make this more Surface user friendly, with having less vertical space taken up and fewer options. But for desktop users, it's just irritating to have to go through an additional step to do a really basic task. Another example of an additional step where it isn't necessary is when you want to select your audio output device. Typically, I switch between a headset and speakers, which I would normally do by right-clicking on the sound options on the taskbar. But what happens if we do that in Windows 11? If we right-click on the sound options on the taskbar now, we don't get a list of the devices we have. We have to then go into sound settings, and then we have to select the device. Again, let's take a look at another example of this kind of functionality. Say you want to take a look at your power plan and you want to change from either Ryzen balance to high performance. It's actually been stripped back a lot more compared to Windows 10. So, how do you find your original power plan like you would in Windows 10? Now, you have to go into Control Panel, Hardware and Sound, then you get Power Options, and there you go. That's where you get your regular power plans like you would in Windows 10. Now going into here, this is where you can actually select whether you want to use Ryzen Balance power plan, or additionally you can go to your settings for what the power button does. You can disable fast startup. As I mentioned previously, the only reason I could expect this change to be useful is for mobile users, but for more power users like gamers or content creators, it's just adding extra steps for the most basic functions. Now, another thing I'm still on the fence about is widgets. While they do have a use that some people could find interesting, for me it's not really that beneficial. We've got weather, that's cool. Stocks, I'm not really interested in seeing stocks. Sports, what is a sport? I don't know. Again, some people could find it useful, so I'm not going to really roast it too hard, but for me, it's not particularly interesting. Another gripe of mine, and possibly one of the most major things that I'm disappointed with Windows 11, is the fact that if you use multiple monitors, you will only get a clock on your main display and not on the secondary monitor. So say you're a gamer and a streamer, Your main display is going to have the game you're playing, obviously, and then your secondary display will have OBS or your live chat, something like that. But unless you close out the game, you're going to have no way of seeing what the actual time is. This change is just really bizarre, so if you use multiple monitors, it's just something to be wary of. Now, one of the things I haven't discussed is gaming performance. I will actually be doing a dedicated video comparing gaming performance on both Windows 10 and 11 to see if there's any improvement or any regression. But so far, I've only really played Doom Eternal on Windows 11, and it's been running basically exactly the same as it was on Windows 10 for me. Admittedly, Doom Eternal is so well optimized it could run on a toaster at this point, but it's been totally fine for me so far. However, there have been reports of reduced gaming performance, specifically in esports titles. Now, there's a few reasons for this that have been reported, specifically when it comes to Ryzen CPUs and CPU scheduling and L3 cache. CPU scheduling seems to have an issue with preferred cores not functioning correctly. It's been reported that preferred core may not preferentially schedule threads in a processor's fastest core. Additionally, with the L3 cache bug, it causes performance degradation when it comes to applications sensitive to memory subsystem latency. In this instance, that's basically esports titles that heavily demand on CPU performance and L3 cache in order to drive high refresh gaming. Now, both AMD and Microsoft have promised us this will be patched out very soon, so it's still an issue you should be wary of if you are looking to upgrade. Now, Doom Eternal is definitely a high refresh FPS title, and as I explained, performance was basically identical for myself. But I will ensure to test that on both Windows 10 and 11 thoroughly, including titles such as CSGO, which are going to be dependent on CPU performance. There's a lot more when it comes to Windows 11, but those are my main notes after a few days of using it. My overall opinion on Windows 11 though? It's okay. It's literally a reskinned Windows 10, with some changes that are good and some that are bad. Like I said, those are my thoughts though, but what are your thoughts so far on Windows 11? Have you upgraded, or are you not going to upgrade for some time yet? Let me know down in the comments below. I'd love to hear what you have to say. If you enjoyed this video, then please feel free to like and subscribe for more videos on the way soon. Thank you, and I'll see you next time.